Okay, better, much better.
Is it okay now, sir?
Okay, okay.
Still not okay.
Can I begin, sir?
No, just wait for a moment.
Okay, sir.
So good morning again to each and everyone. Let us observe silence for a moment and we'll start with the universal invocation. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. Please, 1 minute meditation. Thank you. Let us over to Shivani.
Thank you so much, sir. A very good morning to each and every member present here. Dear brother and sisters, we are today assembled here for the conference, 98th Easter Conference 2022. The Theosophical Society invites you to all the 3-day 98th Easter Conference 2022, and the theme of this conference is From Known to Unknown. We are assembled here to make this conference memorable because we all share our views, and in the chat box you can put your comments which will be discussed from 5 p.m. onwards. Today we have two speakers, and I would like to invite from bottom of my heart the first speaker, Sister Miss Lakshmi, and I would like to introduce her. Good morning, ma'am. I would like to introduce her. Her educational background: she has done BSc, MA, BEd. She worked as a teacher in Central School. She is a Telugu Federation lecturer since 2000, member of Vijayanagaram Society. And at last, I would like to mention one thing, that she has joined the Theosophical Society in 1988. So over to Miss Lakshmi. I would like to welcome ma'am from the bottom of my heart. So you can begin with your speech. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Shivani. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Namaste to everybody. Today's topic is the mind is the slayer of the real. Mind means thought, and slayer means killer. And we all know every day we have been using the mind for all the activities, from the morning till the night, or else the moment we can talk till that at the end of the life we have been using the mind. We are accustomed to use the mind in all the activities and all the time, and that is very useful in our day-to-day activities. Like if I want to learn technology, mind is essential. One minute, its voice is not audible. Okay. Or for education, for everything the mind is essential. And we are, all our desires are filled with thoughts. Because of thought only we are getting desires. And all gunas, all our emotions are because of thought. Thought is playing a very essential role in our life. But at the same time, we have to understand the limitations of thought. If we observe carefully, whatever we know in the past, we are able to identify. If I want to say it is a mango, I should know before that it is a mango. Then only, that means past knowledge I must have. Then only I can say it is a mango. The same thing, he is so and so to say, I must have the past knowledge. So we have to understand that thought is the past. And always we are living in the past. We are using the thought means we are always living in the past. For example, I have to find, I have to see a rose flower. I see with my past impression. That point we are accustomed. Always I have a concept, whatever I have seen. And with the concept only I am seeing that rose, or the tree, or the sky, or the people. A wife is looking at the husband with the image, with the pre-thought. And this is a very essential part of the thought. Generally, we think we are seeing, but we are seeing our image. For example, I bought a beautiful scenery and kept it in my house. And I see the beauty which I saw yesterday when I bought. And that only I am seeing. Instead of seeing the picture as a new way, I have been seeing my own old image of the picture. And this we have been doing. If we keenly observe, we have been seeing our concepts and images instead of seeing that in a new way. A very beautiful building, I captured it in my camera, and second time when I see that image which is in my mind. So in this way, we have been seeing the present with the past. And these images are only working. And we have to understand that we are not able to see the fact. For example, 10 days before, I had a pain. And I can recollect the pain today in a fresh way, and I feel the pain. Not only after 10 days, even after 1 year, I can feel the psychological and the physical pain also. So mind has such faculty. And we have been seeing all the things with the mind, with the past. And the past is seeing the present, and so it cannot see. There is conflict. We have been wasting a lot of energy in this way. And this thought, which is useful for all our day-to-day activities, to learn the technological things. If I want to go to anybody's house, I must use the thought. If I don't have that knowledge, past knowledge, I cannot identify the house. For all these things, thought is very essential. And not only that, in our life, we say 5 kleshas. That is, first one is avidya, ignorance, asmita, that means ego, raga, attraction, dvesha, repulsion, abhinivesha. These are 5 kleshas. Abhinivesha means desire for life. All these things are of the thought. Thought only. If we observe, we have been filled with so many types of worries, anxieties, sorrows, fears. These are all due to thought. If we observe carefully, our anger and our jealousy, the reason is thought. So this thought is useful to do the worldly activities and all the technological activities. It is not useful in some places. That is, to see the reality. You can ask, are we not seeing the reality? This world, which we say, which is visible to us, we say it is a real world. But if we see carefully, we can see the world with eyes. We can hear with at least ears. We can smell things with the nose. Taste the things with the tongue. Same thing with the touch we can perceive. But only these are sense organs. And with the mind, if the sense organs, the mind is not cooperating, they won't work. For example, I am eating a very tasty thing, but my mind is filled with a sudden shock of sorrow or something. I can't perceive the taste of the object. So what we have to understand is these senses are also working because of mind. And then this world, even in our Upanishads, it is said this is a drishya prapancha. That means drishya means it is only apparently visible, which we think very real. It's not real. It is like an image in the mirror. That is why our shastras are saying that this is not created. It is projecting from that omnipotent consciousness. Then what is God? Even Blavatsky, in her proposition, first proposition, she said that there is an immutable principle. To describe it is to dwarfen it, as it is said in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. We cannot see with the eyes. It cannot be perceived with the senses. It cannot be known with the mind. But how can you say that it is? It is. And it is the main thing for the entire universe. And for the universe to function, this is the main principle. So we have to understand the senses and the mind, they are limited, and there is certainly unlimited thing which we cannot perceive with the mind. As we are not able to perceive with the mind, we cannot say it is not. Because it is the substratum, it is the main thing for the entire universe, and billions of universes are producing from that and again emerging into it. That is the second proposition, like an ebb and tide of an ocean. And those billions of universes will come into a corner of that. That is why in Sanskrit, to describe it, we use the word Bhuma. It's very, very great. It's grand here. We can't tell the word there. We can't describe it because we can't even compare it because there is no other thing equal to that. And Jiddu Krishnamurti, the one philosopher, says that self-knowledge is not the end of the life. Every individual from the childhood must have self-knowledge, and that knowledge will solve the present-day problems like person is killing a person. And the solution is only the self-knowledge. And that is to know oneself. For example, I go here and there for peace of mind. People are thinking that the peace is in the mind, in the money, so they have been earning the money till the death. But the person who has a lot of money has no peace. The same thing, we have been earning the money for the five senses. We can enjoy only with the five senses. So that is not enough. If you enjoy with the five senses, they will fail. So this instrument, that is the body, it is an instrument. And if you do not protect this instrument, it will not be useful to do the work. That is why this is not, we say my body, means I am not the body. My mind, that indicates that I am not the mind. The real problem lies, I know intellectually, psychologically that I am not the body, but actually am I behaving like that? Actually, when the time comes, are we feeling that we are not the body and we are not the mind? This identification is giving the five places. Always we know intellectually, but actually we always identify ourselves with the mind. That's why if anybody opposes our opinion, we feel very bad, as though they are cutting us. It is the difference of opinion, but they're not telling any other thing. But we are hurt. So all these things because of the mind. So this is such an instrument. It will be useful wherever it is required. And some places we have to leave the mind. But we have been accustomed to use the mind all the time. For example, we want to know that immutable principle. I want to know with the mind only because I am accustomed to know everything with the mind. So that immutable principle also I want to know with the mind. How is it possible? In its description only, the reality is beyond the mind. We have been functioning with the mind. Why human being is feeling difficulty? Because everything they are catching with the mind, but that immutable, that omnipotent consciousness cannot be caught with the mind. Then, how? That is the thing. See, for example, people are feeling, I'm lonely. What will happen in my old age? Like that. And not only that, this loneliness, who is creating the loneliness? We try to avoid the loneliness. We run away from the loneliness. So we switch on the TV or radio or something, or go to some bhajan to avoid our loneliness. But we never face the loneliness. See, this loneliness is a thought. If we observe it, how to observe? That's very much essential. I observe, then what? That is a carelessness, not in such a way. A type of humility is required. Total attention is required to observe ourselves. Without any thought, can I observe? And without the observer. And another important thing is this observer, the me, is also made up of thought. See, for example, I am saying me, I. Who is that me? This is also made of thought. We have been doing so many personality training, but this personality should be dissolved. What does that mean? Is there any existence? Is my body my me? Or this mind? Or what? If we go deeply, then we can understand my aspirations, my ambitions, my past knowledge, my experience, my whims and fancies, all these are me. My bank balance, my security, all these are me. That means this me is created by the thought and it has no existence. That point we have to remember. And for which no existence, for that sake we have been striving to protect. We have our image. In my image, I am very, very kind, but actually I have no kindness. In my image, I am very affectionate, but in actuality I have no affection. So I am accustomed to live in my image, and if anybody tries to put a soul in my image, that means anybody says, you are saying that you are kind, but there is no kindness. That's not kindness, it's not inside you. Then I don't like it. Immediately I pave, as though I paved the building.
No, no, no. With the help of self-deception, I pay it. No, no, no. I have a lot of kindness. Like that, this self-deception will help us to protect the image. In this way, from the childhood till the death, we have been protecting the image, and for the image sake, we have been spending a lot of energy. And that is our life. But actually, if we observe, the image has no existence, that me has no existence. And we have been accustomed to see the unreality as reality. That we say illusion. We have been accustomed to live in the illusion. We have an image of our own, and in the same way we have an image of others. We have been living in the images, not in the real. As long as we are living in the images, there is no love. Image is loving the image. No love is there. As long as the thought is telling that this is love, that is not love. That is made of thought. For example, a wife is loving the husband, or the husband is loving the wife. The wife is loving the image of the husband. That means, in one way, if the husband protects, gives some type of comfort, all types of conveniences, then the wife loves the husband. Our social status, wife is loving her own social status, her own comfort, her own desire, in the name of loving the husband. Vice versa, the husband is loving the wife in the same way. If these are not produced, so if we go keenly, we are loving ourselves. It is not the love of the other person, or there is no love. This is all made of heart. Same thing, mother loves the child. It is sacred. You go to the temple, there is a sacred atmosphere. Real sacredness is inside. We are attributing sacredness to the idol. If we deeply see ourselves, sacredness is beyond thought. So, to see ourselves, generally what is there inside us? A lot of fear. Fear of what will happen tomorrow, what will happen in the future, when the death comes. All these things are occupying in our life. Are we afraid of death? Or are we afraid of losing our own things, our attachments, our possessions? We don't like to leave all these things. The mind does not know what is death. Mind can function only in the field which it knows. So there the mind remains still. When the mind remains still, then there is that supreme intelligence where there is no past. Means we have been, see, this is our actual thing. We have been seeing the images. We are living in concepts. We never see the reality. The fact also we never see. We see the fact as our concept or an image. In this way, we have been living in the unreal world, thinking it is real. So the mind, as long as thought is there, it is obstructing to see the real. This point is a fact in our day-to-day life also, we have to see it. When the mind is functioning, we have fear. You observe fear. What is this fear? Always we are accustomed to run away from the fear. We don't want to face the fear. If we face the fear without any thought, then we understand. We can see, we can come out of the fear. So our fear, our sorrow, our suggestions, all these things are made up of thought. Security. The mind always wants security. Is there any security? Security of body. or security of the mind? For whom the security? We always try for security. And as long as the mind is working, you are different, I am different. Division. Mind's work is to divide and divide. Generally, we are called individuals. Do you know the meaning of individual? The dictionary meaning is that cannot be divided. We cannot be divided. We are all in a whole, but we think we are divided. Who is dividing? Heart is divided. I am different. My body may be different. Your body may be different, but we are not different. We are all one. Not only the body, the entire universe is one. The reality is one. But always we live in division. And as we are thinking we are different, then I try to dominate you. If I do not feel that you are different, there is jealousy. Because I feel you are different, I am jealous of you. And I feel something special. I always want some speciality. Why? Because that underground thought, underlying thought that I am different. Am I different? Question ours. If you question, we can understand. We are all one inside, but the thought is dividing us. The reality, oneness, the thought is making it into fractions. And nowadays, people are killing, the wars are going on because of this division, because of this mind functioning, because of lack of self-knowledge. So that is essential from the childhood. And if there is self-knowledge, under the light of self-knowledge, we can understand anything and everything in a clear way. Clear perception of things will be there. When the mind stops, intelligence will use the mind as an apparatus. That is different. And love breaks up. That is the love. For example, a flower is giving the fragrance. Is it giving to one person? It's a natural thing. Always it gives and gives the fragrance. In the same way, there is love. There is compassion. These are all our qualities, innate qualities. We have been going here and there for our love and other things, or for peace. But that is inside like an ocean, but it is covered and covered. For example, a bulb is shining like anything. And many layers are covering the bulb and the bulb light is not coming out. Same way, the human being, though his embodiment of love, compassion, happiness, that is bliss, the mind is covering layer after layer. And that is why every day, without our knowledge, we have been using the mind and mind. So this is an instrument made of subtle matter. Where it is required, you have to use. Where it is not required, you have to leave. For example, the boat is required to cross the river. Shall I carry the boat? Wherever it is required, we are using. Wherever it is not required, we are leaving. The mind is also like that. It is a subtle instrument. Wherever it is required, you have to use it. And wherever it is not required, leave it. Because it is covering, it is completely playing. Play means still. It is still in the reality. And that is real education. To know that reality, to be in the reality, because we cannot know the reality, it cannot be known with the intellect. It can be, see, for example, a doll, a toy made up of dolls, wanted to measure the sea. It went to the sea. The moment it went into the sea, It is dissolved. It cannot measure the sea because there is no being, means it is not there. Totally dissolved. Same way, the reality can be experienced without an experiencer. We can observe without an observer. So, even in our day-to-day life, do we know seeing? We see, we think we are seeing. I see a cloud or a building. I see with the image, always in my image is in my mind. Without image, can I see? If we observe carefully, this is very essential point in our life. We have been accustomed to see with the image only. As a result, we are not seeing the actuality. This image we are bringing forward. The past, the thought being the past, it is working in the present. And thought is making the future also. So we have been living in the thought. That is why you explain anybody about that reality, people say, I am not able to grasp with the mind. Because we want to grasp everything with the mind. Though we have been explaining it's avang manasa gocharamu, in Sanskrit it is said. Means you cannot describe it with words. You cannot perceive it with the mind. But we have been trying to perceive it with the mind. The reason is we have been accustomed to use the mind only. We are not spending even a second without mind. Understand the limitations of the mind. The mind which is of the past cannot be useful to know the present or the is distorting the reality. We are always seeing the images. That is the very essential thing. If we understand, the understanding will solve the problem. The moment you understand, there is, we were under the impression there is a snake. And then how much time we have been afraid. Oh, the snake is in my house, in the corner of the storeroom. 1 day over, 2 days over, 5 days over, with the fear. We have a lot of fear. Oh, there is a snake. If we go, it will bite. If we disturb, it will come out. So all this, like this 10 days or 50 days, we will be with the fear. But somehow, we realize it is a rope, not a snake. All these 50 days impression will be spoiled or dismantled within a second. So 50 days we don't take to think that it is not a snake, it is a rope. So that faculty is there to our mind. When we understand, immediately within seconds we can perceive the reality. That is the faculty of our mind. So here, that capacity is there. So in this way, if we observe the life, there is no sorrow. When you see the life with one whole consciousness, what is our consciousness if you question? The content of the consciousness is to empty our content with the help of the mind only. Then love springs up. So we are filled always with so many. Always we have been filled with thoughts, past knowledge, past memories, and our ambitions, our hopes, our desires. These are all in the name of I we have been working. If we observe carefully, one after another, not like that. If we observe carefully, in one split second, all these things will dissolve. Then love springs up. Compassion will be there. So, What I am not, I have been thinking I am. I identify with my mind. I have images, concepts, and I lead my life with all these things, thinking I. That is why every minute conflict, lose of energy. My life, for example, I see a person who is better than me in many ways. He doesn't do anything, but I have conflict. Conflict will be started. Comparison will bring the conflict. This origin of comparison is division. I am different, you are different. I am stamping myself as a Brahmin or as a Hindu. This type of things are solidified in our mind. And that much solidified and conditioned that we don't know that we are conditioned. We have been working with all the conditioned mind only. We try to understand any type of thing with that conditioned mind. And we think by accumulating so much of information, we feel that I know a lot. What I know? I know words. After uttering words, do I know more than that? I do read this book, that book, and accumulate 10 times. I repeat the word Parabrahman, and I think I know about Parabrahman. I know about Krishna. I don't know about the person who is my friend totally, fully. I know the surface level of my friend. I don't know the internal things of the friend. This point I have to understand. I don't know about my body fully. Only the surface knowledge I have. I don't know how to stop my heart. I don't know how to digest my food. I don't know how to control the heartbeat or the functioning of the lung or the liver. But we are under the impression, we know, I am doing all these things. We are putting the rice and the water on the stove, telling I am cooking. The stove is cooking, right? Everywhere we are feeling the doership and the enjoyership. This is also false. If we observe carefully with a lot of attention, now what we are lacking is attention. And that is why so many troubles are created. If we live with attention, then our brain also will function very nicely. With this lack of attention in the night time, what happens? The brain wants order. So to bring out order, it sends out all the impressions in the form of dreams. And if a person who is with attention, with awareness, his brain will be nice. It won't do a lot of work. It won't wither away so fast. But we have been dealing our life with inattention. We never understand anything, and we live under concepts and images, and we bring our restlessness inside, filled with conflict. Lot of energy have been spending. When you are with attention, this total energy will be there. When you observe yourself with attention, with a lot of energy, so where from the energy came? Not from any outside source. This is the energy inside. You have been dissipating the energy in the form of thoughts, in the form of conflict, in the form of images and concepts, and emotions. All this energy now functions, and with a lot of energy and with total attention, with choiceless awareness. What is that choiceless awareness? Without any judgment. Oh, this is good, this is bad. Without any evaluation. If we observe with a type of a mind, with innocent mind, we always feel, I know a lot. What I know? I know only the words. And when you realize, or when we realize that we know only words, then real type of obedience will come to us. Yes, except words, I don't know anything. Have I seen it? Have I the experience? I only say somebody's experience is my experience. Their thoughts as my own thoughts. This I am accustomed thinking this is knowledge. And what is the use of that knowledge? The computer chip has a lot of knowledge on our brain cells. So accumulating knowledge is not a criteria. In this way, to observe, the mind is covering the reality. So the mind is the slayer of reality. That is why, without an observer, with total attention, with an innocent mind, with a mind that I don't know anything, you observe yourself. Without an observer, that is the reality. So, we understand the mind is covering the reality everywhere. That is why in the voice of the silence it is said, mind is the slayer of the real. But we do not think of that reality even 1 minute, sometimes the silence, the whole life it will be past. Which is the essential thing, which is the main thing of all our pivotal point of the life. We never think of it. We live in the images and we are having so many emotions, grudges. We spend our full life, again one incarnation after another, life after death, and again life after death, like this we are spending. But we never think of the reality, which is the very, very essence of the life. Without the reality, there is no life. And that is Purnam, means fullness. And that fullness is, and the embodiment of that fullness. And outside universe is also is that fullness, which cannot be described. It cannot be described. It cannot be caught with the mind, but it is the pivotal thing, very essential thing of the entire universe, and that is the reality. So when we start living in the reality, no soul is there, no other person is there. As individuals, we are all without any division. No American, no Indian, like that. We are one. This is a cat or a tree, and in the cat and the tree, that reality is there. So the entire thing is that one reality. That is the main thing. Whatever we say, we can name anyway, but we should not go. The word is not the thing. We use any word for that, but the word is not the thing. To describe it, we can describe, but description is different and described is different. That is why, if we observe this, in this way we live, there is a lot of peace, love, bliss, no otherness. Only you will live in the present. You need not bring the past always, except when it is required. You can use the past also as an instrument. Whenever it is required, you can use it. The past knowledge, if not, you will leave it. So that is that how the mind is hindering, how the mind is covering the truth. That is, because of the mind, we are accustomed to the mind only and thinking this is only everything, and we are not in the reality. Because we are accustomed to perceive things with the senses and the mind, we say there is no reality. But we should come to that level. Beyond the mind only, everything is there. Beyond the senses only, everything is there, which cannot be described. And there is no describer. That which is described and the describer becomes one. Okay, I think the time is finished. Thank you all. Namaste.
Unmute yourself, Shivani, please.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your insightful thought. We are grateful to listen you. And you have mentioned the lines of Upanishad, which was very beautiful. And as we can see, the elaboration of the mind term, that is the meditative, intuitive, neurological dimension of the device. Yes, mind, you have mentioned the topic very elaborately and very clearly. Today, we are very grateful that we are here today to listen you. And your topic, mind is the slayer of the real. You have mentioned the topic in the multi-dimensional way that mind is very powerful, mind is very strong, and by elaborating the lines from different sources, ma'am, and by giving different examples in a multi-dimensional way from the different platforms. So thank you so much once again for your insightful thought. Thanks a lot. Now, I would like to welcome our second speaker, Brother Dr. T.K. Nair. I am welcoming you by introducing about you. He has done his BSc in Physics, Chemistry and Mathematics in 1963 from Kerala University. And then further, he has done his B.Ed, M.Ed, Diploma in Adult Education, MA in History in the Modern Period, PhD in Education and PTDCA in Computer Application. He has done his education from 1963 to 2002. And also, he has worked as an instructor in Army Educational Corps Training College and Central, Panchmarhi, and also as a demonstrator of the Government Engineering College in Physics. He has done his working as a teacher in St. Joseph High School, Methilakam, and he has also worked as the HOD in Physics as a principal in KD Handa, Norohi, Kenya, Africa. And also, he has also been a headmaster and the lecturer and the headmaster principal in the St. Joseph College, Thiruthipuram Gurusi Public School, which is from the CBSE board, and the St. Joseph High School, Mathilikam. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us, and I welcome you from bottom of my heart, and we all are very eager to listen your words about the topic, and the topic is the three halls, the ending of misery and toils. So I'm welcoming you once again, so please put your thoughts in front of us. Thank you.
Namaste to everybody. Before beginning, I must express my gratitude to all those who have considered me as a speaker for this Easter Conference 22. The topic given to me for presentation before you is three halls, the ending of misery and toils. I wonder what use is there by the verbal exercise that we are doing here. The history of the Theosophical Society shows that even during the period of Madame Blavatsky, out of thousands of aspirants for treading the path of occultism, only about 70 were serious. From among them, only one could cross the shore, Brother Damodar K. Mavlankar. I have read somewhere that one of the reasons for Madame Blavatsky to leave India permanently was the non-serious attitude of the TS fellows here. Now that seriousness has been diluted considerably, how many of us are ready to cross the three halls? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you anything about the halls. So let us begin with the halls. I hope you will take my remark positively, please. Am I intelligible to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you. So I'll continue. The three halls. The three halls, O weary pilgrim, lead to the end of toils. Three halls, O conqueror of Mara, will bring thee through three states into the fourth, and thence into the seven worlds, the worlds of rest eternal. If thou wouldst learn their names, then hearken and remember. The name of the first hall is ignorance, avidya. It's the hall in which thou sawest the light, in which thou livest and shalt die. The name of the hall second is the hall of learning. In it, thy soul will find the blossom of life, but under every flower a serpent coiled. The name of the third hall is wisdom, beyond which stretch the shoreless waters of Akshara, the indestructible pond of omniscience. The three halls may be interpreted in two ways, as objective plane or as the subjective condition of man. In the first case, the hall of ignorance is the physical plane, and the hall of learning, the astro-mental plane. That is the astral and lower mental planes taken together. I think you all know that this portion is from HBB's last gift. Not to all, but those ignorant of the dangers of the lower ethik, the voice of silence, a mystical teaching. Here she leads us to cross to the other shore, to find the truth, to nirvana, to moksha, to adeptship, to self-realization. In the fourth paragraph, she says, the mind is the great layer of the real, as Sister Lakshmi ji just now explained. That means the mind has a very important role to play in the journey. So let us begin with the mind first. There is nothing so fascinating and yet nothing so difficult as the study of the human mind. For the mind has many layers of existence: conscious, subconscious, unconscious, and superconscious. To comprehend the working of the mind is to observe it in different settings. From many standpoints, the activities of the conscious mind make it very difficult to probe other layers of the mind. And yet, the most significant aspects of the mind are not at the conscious level. It is therefore extremely profitable to watch the operations of the mind when the conscious level is comparatively quiet. It is because of this that modern psychologists have laid great stress on the study of dreams, for the dream state indicates a non-active. It's true that the brain is not synonymous with the mind. The psychologist makes use of certain drugs by which the brain can be made quiet, but certainly not the mind. The modern tranquilizers may produce tranquility of the brain by soothing or dulling the nerves, but surely they cannot create tranquility of the mind. Psychology will understand the secret achieving mental tranquility only when it turns to yoga. It is to this tranquil mind that HPB points the way in the voice of silence. In order to achieve mental tranquility, we need to understand the ways of the mind. The best way of doing this is to observe it unawares. It means that it is not in the sphere of deliberate thinking that the mind can be effectively observed. At the conscious level, mind follows a cultivated pattern of thinking. It's quite obvious that the natural trend of the mind cannot be perceived at this level. To take the mind unawares is to observe its drifting of thinking, which reveals its natural habits and impulses. The mind follows a particular plane of inclination, of course, differing from individual to individual. But in each person, it represents the habits of his or her mind. It is therefore necessary for us to understand our own psychological planes of inclination. Behind the habits of the mind lies a vast background of thought. And it is this background which truly is the thought producer. In this kind of study, it is not the pattern of thought that is so important as the background of the thought. Our normal day-to-day thinking invariably inclines towards this background. In observing the drift of thought, one comes into contact with this background, the source of all the various operations of the mind. The human mind is indeed a very clever instrument. For the purpose of its own security, it splits itself into two parts so that one part of the mind sits in judgment over the other. The part of the mind that judges and evaluates assumes an air of superiority. It is this part which we usually designate as the I, the self, or the soul. And so, what we actually call the self or the soul is not apart from the mind. It has no existence independent of the mind. To postulate a separate and independent existence for it is indeed a great heresy. Heresy means belief contrary to the orthodox religious doctrine. Patanjali calls it asmita or false identification. In Buddhist literature, it is also known as sakhayaditi, delusion of personality. So having given to this self, which is the product of the mind, a separate and independent existence, we are forever concerned about its security and continuity. We regard its disappearance as a complete annihilation of or nothingness. We regard the maintenance of this self as the supreme spiritual endeavor. How clever indeed is the mind. By giving a new name to that part of which judges and evaluates, it has secured a new lease for itself. It can now seek its continuity in the name of spiritual endeavor. Surely, ignorance, avidya, arising out of false identification is the greatest obstacle in the path of our understanding. Unless we learn to dissociate ourselves from that which is the product of the mind, we cannot begin to comprehend our true nature. It is this dissociation which is the subject matter of the three halls. But before we come to the teaching concerning the three halls and the dissociation from the false identification, we have to remember one thing, that the human mind, in spite of its limitations, has a very important part to play in this drama of mankind's spiritual unfoldment. It cannot be presumed that mind is of no importance, that it has to be, excuse me, condemned because of its cleverness. HPB says, in order to become the knower of all self, thou hast first of self to be the knower. Here she makes a distinction between Atma-jnana and Tattva-jnana, between wisdom and knowledge. The knower of all self is indeed one who has come to wisdom. To come to wisdom is to have a direct perception of reality. But it is not the dull, the indolent mind that can bring one to the doorstep of reality. The empty mind is not a blank mind. The negative mind is not a passive mind. It is not the dull, inert, and indolent mind that has to be carried to the door of reality, but a mind that is alert, alive, and extraordinarily sensitive. And so, one has to be a Tattva-jnana before one becomes an Atma-jnana. It is Tattva-jnana which makes the mind alert. The emptiness of a dull mind results in passivity, while the emptiness of an alert mind results in a condition of negativity. Such a mind is sensitive even to the faintest whisper that comes from the above and beyond. It is true that spiritual realization demands the transcending of the mind, but the fact is that the mind can be transcended only with the help of the mind. How to come to this alert and sensitive mind? How to tread the path of knowledge before coming to the path of wisdom? To these questions, HBB has to say, to reach the knowledge of self, the self, thou hast to give up self to non-self, being to non-being. It is by the process of dissociation, by the process of negation, that one reaches the knowledge of the self. Unless there is a dissociation of the self from the not self, it is not possible to tread the path of knowledge. But how? It's a process of discarding that which one has found by experience to be transient and fleeting. And we know very well that it is Viveka. This is indeed the first noble truth of the Lord Buddha, the Neti Neti of Vedanta. And this is the starting point of our spiritual journey. It is this which is the resurrected path. It is true that the mind engaged in the play of the opposites cannot perceive the real, but there is a perception higher than that of the mind. However, the pilgrim must come properly prepared to the door of higher perception, and the proper preparation consists in his passing through the three halls. Three halls, O weary pilgrim, lead to the end of toils. Three halls, O conqueror of Mara, will bring thee through three states into the fourth, and thence into the seven worlds of rest eternal. The three halls represent different states of our awareness. HBB says that these halls bring the pilgrim through the three states into the fourth. The three states are the waking, Jagrat, the dream, Swapna, and the deep sleep, Sushupti conditions described in the books of Hindu yoga. The fourth is the Turiya, or the transcendental state. Thus, the passage through the three halls brings the spiritual pilgrim to the transcendental state. The first of this hall is the hall of ignorance, wherein the spiritual aspirant is in a state of complete identification with the not-self. It is indeed the hall of identification. HBB warns the pilgrim against the dangers of mistaken identity or false identification, which is the characteristic feature in this first of the three halls. She says, if thou wouldst cross the first hall safely, let not thy mind mistake the fires of lust that burns therein for the sunlight of life. The condition required for the crossing of the hall, this hall, is an ever-increasing awareness of the not-self. The state of awareness correlates to the waking or the Jagrat state, and it is in that state alone that the pilgrim can emerge out of the first hall. Dissociation from the not-self must begin if he is to move towards the second hall. The sphere of the not-self gradually increases, bringing more and more awareness of the transitory and fleeting things of life. We know intellectually that that which is born dies, which means all manifested things are subject to death and decay. And yet, we stubbornly cling to many manifested things as if they were permanent. This shows that transitory nature of those things is not a part of our own experience. We mistake fires of lust for the sunlight of life. It is this mistaken identification that prevent us from moving out of the first hall. Actually, this made me to make the remarks in the beginning. We have now seen that the movement from the hall of ignorance to the hall of learning requires a state of consciousness known as the waking state. Not knowing that self, not knowing what the self is, but increasingly aware of the not self. It is in this condition that the pilgrim enters the second hall. Describing this hall, HBB says, in it thy soul will find the blossom of life, but under every flower a serpent coiled. This is a place in which most of us reside, most of the time. We have to remember that the second hall is the hall of ideation, even as the first hall is the hall of identification. And it is by a process of negation, of dissociation from the not-self, that the pilgrim enters this hall of ideation. The human mind finds the never-ceasing process of negation as too trying, too difficult, because this never-ending process does not allow the mind to find a resting place. Therefore, it creates the opposite point of the not-self. in order that its movement between the 2 points could go on unhampered. This is what the mind does by means of ideation. It creates the self as the opposite of the not self. Because it finds the continual process of putting away the not self as overly straining, the mind creates the self in opposition to the not self and then cling to it. We should know that the mind feels secure only when 2 opposite poles are established. For example, when self and not self exist, then the mind is assured of its continuity. But here, the self is an entirely entity created by the mind for the sake of its own security. But here, the self is an entity created. The mind creates the self in the image of its own craving. It may encase this image in beautiful forms. It may decorate it with all the skill that it commands. But at the core of that image lies the mind's craving for security and continuity. Its entire knowledge is based on the process of comparison and contrast between the negative and the positive poles. And so, while the not self remains a negative pole, it creates the self as a positive pole in order that the 2 can be balanced and the movement of the mind can continue unimpaired. The self created by the mind appears like a blossom due to the beauty of form that it has imparted to it. Into the self, the mind has projected all that the not self is not. In contrast to the not self, the self of the mind appears noble, beautiful, idealistic. But underneath this attachment from form, attractive form, lies the mind's craving for continuity. It is because of this that HPB described the blossom in this hall of learning as having under them a serpent coiled. The serpent represents the craving of the mind. It remains coiled and so is not easily visible because of the beauty of the form in which the mind has encased its craving. HBB says, if thou cross the second hall safely, stop not the fragrance of its stupefying blossoms to inhale. She described the blossom of the mind as stupefying, meaning they are beautiful in form, but ugly in content. With regard to the hall of learning, HBB further says, this hall is dangerous in its perfidious beauty. Beware, Lanu, lest dazzled by elusive radiance, thy soul should linger and be caught in its deceptive light. To describe the hall of learning as one that has perfidious beauty is indeed the case, for the ideations of the mind have an element of pretension in them. They are not what they seem to be. There is a deceptive light and an elusive radiance about them. Woe unto him who lingers in this hall and is taken in by the beauty of outer form and by the glamour of mind's verbalization. HBB gives a strict warning to the pilgrim with regard to the light that shines in the hall of learning. The light shines from the jewel of the great ensnarer Mara. Mara means in exoteric religion, a demon, an asura. But in esoteric philosophy, it is personified temptation through men's vices. And translated literally means that which kills the soul. The senses it, bewitches, blinds. Blinds the mind and leaves the unwary in abandoned dread. The moth attracted to the dazzling flame of thy night lamp is doomed to perish in the viscid oil. The unwary soul that fails to grapple with the mocking demon of illusion will return to earth the slave of Mara. Behold the hosts of souls. Watch how they hover over the stormy sea of human life and how exhausted, bleeding, Broken winged, they drop one after another on the swelling waves. Tossed by the fierce winds, chased by the gale, they drift into the eddies and disappear within the first great vortex. The great danger that faces the pilgrim in this hall of learning is to be attracted like a moth to the dazzling flame of the night lamp. He is likely to regard the image of the mind as reality and begin to worship it and regard it as his journey's end. HBB calls this hall the Mayavic region and tells the spiritual pilgrim that if freed, thou wouldst be from the karmic chains, seek not for thy guru in those Mayavic region. The guru, the master, is not to be found. The guru, the master, is not to be found in the hall of learning. This hall contains only images, idols, and ideations. They are the products of the mind's craving. HBB says that in spite of all these, the mind is needed for the pilgrim's probation. It is indeed necessary for the spiritual pilgrim to pass through this hall if he is to be free from the distractions of the mind and come to the comprehension of the nature of dharana. The pilgrim passes out of the hall of ignorance by dissociation from the not-self. In the hall of ignorance, the mind was dull, but now with the formulation of the two opposite points, it becomes alert and active. The formulation of the opposite sharpens the mind. Its placidity is gone. It has become more pliable. But the hall of learning is not the end, journey's end. The pilgrim must pass out of this hall and move further into the third hall, the hall of wisdom. The question is how? He crosses the hall of learning by the same process of dissociation that helped him to cross the hall of ignorance. He has to dissociate from the self, even as he dissociated from the not-self when he emerged from the hall of ignorance. To dissociate from the self is something unimaginable to the human mind. If the ideations of the mind hold him fast, he must linger in this hall and inhale the poisonous fragrance of its stupefying blossoms. How does this process of dissociation from the self start? With the not-self, we saw that the dissociation begins with the awareness of the transitory nature of things. That which is seen as moving away, as fleeting and transitory, is regarded by many as the not-self. Again, how can one dissociate from the self? The answer is by examining the content of the mind's images and idols. It is by this inquiry into the process of one's thinking that one realizes how hollow are one's ideals and ideations, how terribly deceptive they are, how indeed the idols of the mind have feet of clay. It is this increasing awareness of the pretentiousness underlying the mind's profession which starts the process of dissociation from the self. The idols, the images, the creations of the mind drop away. And as this process of dissociation gathers momentum, the pilgrim passes out of the second hall and is ready for his entrance into the hall of wisdom. We saw in the earlier part of this discussion that the passage from the first hall to the second represents the Jagrat or the waking state of consciousness. Similarly, the passage from the hall of learning to the hall of wisdom represents the Swapna or the dream state. Does not the dream condition imply a dissociation from oneself? Very frequently we find that in dreams, we are quite different from our usual self. In dreams, we are required to play various roles and many times it is difficult for us to recognize ourselves in this dream. In a far deeper sense, this is the condition of man as he leaves the hall of learning. For he leaves behind what he had so far described as his self. With the content of the mind's image laid bare, even the patterns of that image gets shattered. That image cannot hold the attention of the pilgrim anymore. He finds himself free from the distractions of the not-self as well as those of the self. He is once again in a state of negation, his mind finding no footstool to rest its weary feet. To use the description of the Bhagavad Gita, the mind of the pilgrim is homeless within inverted comma. It is without any abode, for both the points of negation and affirmation have been rendered unfit for habitation. It entered the hall of learning freed from the inertia or tamas, but now it leaves the hall freed from activity, rajas. For with the dropping away of the two opposites, that means the self and the not self, it has nowhere to go. Having divested of the mind of all its activity, the pilgrim enters the hall of wisdom. In speaking about this hall, HBB offers this description. The name of the third hall is wisdom, beyond which stretch the shoreless waters of Akshara, the indestructible fount of omniscience. We have described the first two halls in terms of identification and ideation, respectively. The hall of wisdom, which the pilgrim now enters, is truly the hall of illumination. He has left behind the world of images and ideations. No longer is his mind tethered to any fixed point, either of affirmation or of denial. Instructing the aspirant with regard to this hall, HBB gives this advice. Seek for him who is to give thee birth in the hall of wisdom, the hall which lies beyond, wherein all shadows are unknown, and where the light of truth shines with the unfading glory. In this hall, shadows are unknown, indicating that we are no longer dealing with the idols and images. The realm of indirect perception has been left behind. The mind's presence of comparison and contrast are no more, for here the light of truth shines with the unfading glory. It is in this hall that the spiritual pilgrim can know what repose between the wings of the great bird, means Kalahamsa or swan, is. The wings of the bird represent the opposites of the mind. When the opposites drop away, only then is there a possibility of repose between the wings. In reference to this repose, HPB says, sweet, in quote, sweet is rest between the wings of that which is not born nor dies, unquote. Here we then, in this hall of wisdom, come to the perception of the unborn and unmanifest. Has our preparation through the two earlier halls been sufficient to bring us to this higher perception, the perception which is direct and immediate? In the following passage, HPB describes clearly this preparation and the miracle that takes place in this hall of wisdom. That which is uncreate abide in thee, disciple, as it abide in that hall. If thou wouldst reach it and blend the two, thou must divest thyself of the darkness, the garments of illusion. That which is uncreate refers to the higher triad, Atma, Buddhi, Manas, as distinguished from the personality and its bodies. The statement that the hall of learning is needed but for probation applies to the hall of ignorance as well. The set of material planes, physical, astral, and lower mental, are but the building and equivalent of a schoolman in which he is taught by means of toys. He will like the, she says it is the uncreate. Uncreate refers to the uncreate which abide in the hall of wisdom, meaning that which is neither born nor dies. A great miracle takes place in this hall, the blending of the create and the uncreate. But before this blending can take place, the pilgrim must leave behind the dark garments of illusion so that there is no image standing in the way. We might ask, what does this blending of the two means? It obviously means the one becomes the reflection of the other. The create becomes the clear, unspotted mirror in which the uncreate is reflected without any distortion. This implies that in the hall of wisdom, all modifications of consciousness have ceased. A condition of perfect stillness has arrived. In the blending of the create and the uncreate takes place the miracle play of ascent and descent. The create or the manifest becomes the grail. Grail means the cup or platter used by the Christ at the Last Supper, in which the fresh waters of the uncreate are poured. But this can happen only if the grail is completely empty. For it is only the empty cup that can be filled. To come properly prepared is to bring this empty cup. This surely is the meaning of being divested of the dark garments of illusion. The passage through the halls of ignorance and learning enables the pilgrim to bring with him this empty cup to the hall of wisdom. The seemingly negative process of dissociation is, in fact, intensely positive. For what else can be more positive than the fresh waters of life poured by the transcendental reality into the mind emptied of the content? HBB asked the pilgrim to seek for him who is to give thee birth in the hall of wisdom, in the hall of wisdom. In the supreme sense, in the spiritual sense, he who gives birth is the guru, the master. She has indicated that the master cannot be found in the hall of learning. The disciple can find the master only in the hall of wisdom. Why? Because the master transcends the normal consciousness of the disciple. The mind, which is the normal instrument of cognition, cannot comprehend the nature of the master by means of its activities. Between the master and the disciple, there is obviously a gap of consciousness. And so, unless there is a leap in consciousness, the disciple cannot know the master. It is this leap which takes place between the hall of learning and the hall of wisdom. There is a qualitative difference between the two halls. The hall of learning represents the state of mind in its activity, moving between two poles of opposites. But before the disciple can enter the hall of wisdom, this activity has to cease. For unless there is a dissociation both from the not-self and the self, the pilgrim cannot enter the hall of wisdom. But while he finds his guru or master in this hall, his spiritual rebirth does not take place here, but in the region beyond the hall of wisdom. And what is the region beyond the hall of wisdom? Is there anything beyond wisdom? Has the pilgrim to leave this hall too, even as he left the other two halls? In answer to these questions, HBB has this to say. If through the hall of wisdom thou wouldst reach the veil of bliss, disciple, close fast thy senses against the great heresy of separateness that wean thee from the rest. She described that which lies beyond the hall of wisdom as the veil of bliss. It can also be called the hall of initiation. It is here that the spiritual rebirth of the pilgrim takes place, for he is initiated into a new way of life. It is here that the disciple discovers the path. We are concerned here with the passage of the pilgrim from the hall of wisdom to the veil of bliss. For this, the consciousness of separateness must disappear. It means that the disciple must step out of himself. He must be in a condition of ecstasy. And so, it is in this condition that the pilgrim must come out of the hall of wisdom. And this is exactly what is meant by sushupti or deep sleep consciousness. The pilgrim came out of the hall of ignorance in the waking state. He emerged out of the hall of learning in the dream state. Now, out of the hall of wisdom, he must emerge in the deep sleep state, the state in which there is perfect calm, not even a flicker of thought to disturb. There is not even the consciousness on the part of the individual that he is in deep sleep. The deep sleep state is a condition of deep awareness, but it is an awareness in which the person is not aware that he is aware. It is non-awareness in awareness. In other words, it is a state of pure awareness. But the pilgrim is required to leave the hall of wisdom in this deep sleep condition. He arrives at this stage by a process of dissociation. By naming an experience of dropping both the not self and self, man has a consciousness that he is freed from the opposites. In renunciation, so long as there is a feeling I have renounced, there is really no renunciation. If he is to enter the way of bliss, even this feeling of I have dissociated must vanish. And it is only when this feeling vanishes that he can come to the state of deep sleep. Thus, dissociation from the not self, the dissociation from the self, and the dissociation from the very idea of dissociation, these constitute the three states of consciousness through which the disciple comes into the fourth. The Turiya state, which is the transcendental state, the state of initiation, the hour of the spiritual rebirth of the pilgrim. It is in the hour of initiation that the disciple is spiritually reborn, moves without any resistance whatsoever. Surely, it is only in this condition of non-resistance that one can tread the path. But unless a man has stepped out of himself, he cannot be free from resistance. It is through the process of constant dissociation that the pilgrim is engaged, enabled to pass through the three halls and be prepared for the great hour of initiation. The passage through the three halls is indeed the process of the deconditioning of the human mind. The end of the toils, though not of work, comes with the entry of the candidate on the fourth path into the nirvanic plane. So, to conclude, for crossing the shore, we have to dissociate the not self, the self, and also the idea that I have dissociated. As a theosophist, we all know this, but we are unable to do it. We are clinging to the transient, maybe because of the fear or lack of courage or confidence. I can only repeat the reminder of Swami Vivekananda. Uttisthata jagrata prapyavarat nibodhita. Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. Thank you. Thank you all listeners for your persistence to be with me for all this time.
Thank you so much, Brother T.K. Nair, for your valuable thoughts. And we are really very grateful to listen you, because you have, as mentioned, separately the three halls: ignorance, learning, and wisdom. We get to know about each and every horse very deeply today. And also you have mentioned regarding the Bhagavad Gita, the lines from the Bhagavad Gita you have mentioned. And the differences between the horse you have mentioned very deeply, very clearly. So thank you so much for your valuable thoughts and joining this conference, 98th Easter Conference 2022, and being a speaker for this conference. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to each and every member for joining this morning session. I hand over to Brother Shikhar, and I would like to say that I am also very grateful for being a moderator of this program. Thanks a lot once again, everyone.
Thank you, Shivani. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister Shivani, for wonderful moderation and the speakers that we enjoyed listening to in this session. And now we have about a 10 minutes break. So in that you can bring a cup of tea or coffee and enjoy the video that we are going to share about the Indian section, which has been made by our very hard-working members of Prayas Theosophical Lodge, as you can see, and especially the script of which is written by Subralina Mohanty. Presentation and video editing has been done by her daughter Pranchi Mohanta, and the background music, that is flute, is by Vishwajit Mohapatra. So let us all enjoy this very nice video of Indian section Varanasi.
Shekharji, no sound is coming.
Okay, just a minute.
Of Varanasi has been the land of Varanasi has been the ultimate pilgrimage spot for Hindus for ages. Hindus believe that one who is graced to die on the land of Varanasi would attain salvation and freedom from the cycle of birth and rebirth. Abode of Lord Shiva and Parvati, the origins of Varanasi are yet unknown. Visitors from many parts of the country visit this holy place throughout the year. There are many age-old monuments, temples, shrines in and around the city, attracting people to rejuvenate by a trip that connects to their soul. The river Ganga brings the morning vibes of the most beautiful sight of the sun rising and setting at the horizon. The morning Ganga Aarti before sunrise is organized by Subha-e Banaras. It is truly mesmerizing to see the Aarti being done even as the sun rises slowly and lazily from the east. The Aarti is followed by a musical rendition by the artist of the day. Amidst the rush and chaos of the city being visited by people from all corners of the country, there stands a serene and calm old estate of the Theosophical Society, welcoming all members, visitors, and well-wishers to embrace with peace and harmony with its natural ambience. The Indian section of the Theosophical Society was constituted by an executive order of the President Founder Henry S. Olcott dated November 17, 1890, stating, "The Indian section of the Society is formally constituted as a section for the whole of India effective from January 1, 1891. By that time, 127 lodges had already been chartered in India, showing that theosophical work was already quite strong there, mainly due to Olcott's extensive tours. The Indian section of the Theosophical Society was registered on 31st August 1903 with its headquarters at Varanasi. It is the National Society for India to carry out within its jurisdiction the objects of the Theosophical Society. The present estate of the Indian section headquarters covers about 70,000 square meters. On it stands the famous bungalow Shantikunj, the Abode of Peace, in which Dr. Annie Besant lived from March 1900 until she moved to Adyar when she became the international president in 1907. She continued to consider Varanasi her home and India her homeland till she passed away in 1933. The lush green campus of the Indian section is well maintained and kept vibrant by sincere workers. There are many air purifying plants and fragrant flowers which keep the ambience of this campus fresh and welcoming. This is also a home to many birds and insects who add vibrations to the calmness of the campus. Delegates gather in the lawn for a friendly chit-chat during any convention and meeting of the Indian section. The Bhojan Shala in the campus has a well-maintained kitchen and the workers are very diligent in serving healthy vegetarian food for all delegates during the conventions and meetings. There is a proper timeliness scheduled for breakfast, lunch and dinner with tea time. The members and delegates are relaxed and they feel at home while visiting the campus. There is a serene temple of Shiva known as Shanteshwar Temple. The white Shiva Shakti as seen in this image was donated by Dr. I.K. Taimur. Linga is the symbol of potential energy of Shiva who represents the whole cosmos, and Shakti or Prana is the life energy that makes possible movement in the cosmos. Shakti and Shiva symbolize energy and consciousness. Shiva is Shava or corpse without Shakti. Vedanta views her as the essence of the stream of consciousness. The potential remains formless and hence Nirakar. Another activity taken up by a number of lodges in India is the Bharat Samaj, started in 1920. It was initially meant to simplify the Hindu rituals. Under the leadership of Pandit Mahadeva Shastri of the Adyar Library and Research Center, a daily puja was introduced, taking mantras from the ancient scriptures. It was publicly performed for the first time by Krishnamurti at the convention in 1925. There are Bharat Samaj temples on the TS premises at Adyar and Varanasi, and the puja is performed there daily. On certain days, it is performed regularly in several lodges, and it is a common feature on some special occasions. It was established in 1954 by Dr. Rohit Mehta, who was inspired by Dr. Annie Besant and went on to found this college for women education with the motto Education as Service. The college is run by Besant Education Fellowship and situated in the compound of the Theosophical Society at Kamacha, Varanasi. The renovated hostel in the campus is named after him as Rohit Mehta Bhavan. Annie Besant School, run by Besant Education Fellowship, was founded in 1952 as Shishu Vihar. In 2005, Shishu Vihar and Annie Besant Primary School were merged and renamed as Annie Besant School. It was upgraded in 2015. Now, the students from class prep to class 8th are getting value-based education in a beautiful ambience. The headquarter main building has the office of the President, Indian section and workstation of the staff. There is a meeting hall where members and delegates attend seminars, lectures and significant functions of the TS. This is a picture of Federation secretaries assembled for a meeting. Members and delegates stay at Suryashram during their visit for conventions and meetings. The infrastructure is well maintained by the administration of Indian section for ensuring that the basic hygiene and ambience is maintained during their stay in the campus. Dr. A. Richardson was one of the stalwarts laying the foundations of the theosophical work. He was a very sympathetic soul and a devout worker in the cause of theosophy in general and education in particular. He was brought by Mrs. Annie Besant, specially as the principal of the Central Hindu College, founded and opened by her on July 7, 1898. The Richardson House inside the Indian section headquarters reminds all who visit the campus of the selfless and learned workers at the caliber of Dr. Richardson and many more. According to a student of the Theosophical School who first came to live in the Indian section headquarters in 1932, he heard a number of anecdotes and stories about the campus in the early days from his teachers and elders. It is said that one of the inner founders visited Varanasi and stayed for a while at the old Shiva temple in the campus. He bathed in the adjoining water tank, whose parapets are still intact, and drew drinking water from a well nearby, which still exists though not noticed by many. He tied his horse to a tree which has not been identified. There is a bilwa tree at the temple whose fruits are exceptionally delicious. Saplings from it are available in the TS nursery at Adyar. Mrs. Besant had the temple renovated. Later, the tank was filled up and 2 tennis courts were made. In late 30s, it was given shape of an amphitheatre. The same was renovated and was inaugurated during the 144th International Convention held in the Indian Section campus.
Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Hope you enjoyed this wonderful video made by Prayas Theosophical Lodge. And to take you to the next session, I invite Sister Vimal Balachanda to take over this session and do that. Thank you, Vimal.
Thank you, Shikhar, and thank you to the Indian section for this privilege of introducing the next two speakers. Our first speaker is Brother Kumar Patri. He has a master's in commerce and currently works for Tata Consultancy Services. He has been an insurance professional with over 15 years of experience in the insurance industry and 13 years of experience in information technology. He specializes in life insurance, pensions, and consulting in business process and solutions. He conceptualized several innovative solutions for different lines of business. He received patents, copyrights for IT applications, and solutions conceptualized. He has also received award for contribution made for intellectual property building. He comes from a theosophical family. His father is Professor G.K.R. Patri, a veteran in the Theosophical Society. As a young theosophist, he contributed to the activities of the TS wings, such as the Round Table, the Mystic Star, and other programs of the Youth Lodge. He assists in the archives department in his spare time now. The topic of his talk is head learning and soul wisdom. Over to you, brother.
Thank you, ma'am, for the kind introduction. Am I audible and can you all see me? Just a confirmation.
Yes.
So the topic that is being given to me is very profound as of all other subjects. And before I plunge into the main concept or the theme, let me take a step back on this topic of head learning and soul wisdom. By looking at what is learning, what do we mean by learning? What does it mean to learn? From the age of 5 or less, we begin to learn certain facts, certain pieces of information are continuously given to us. We store it as an information into our memory, and that memory we retrieve, and on this retrieval we act, react, and take up our lives and also apply it in our professions. So this application may be a mere collection of facts, concepts, ideas, or ideals. In the modern world, we call this as learning. This is gathering of information of what various people have to say and demonstrate. So learning in its true sense is not accumulation of knowledge. This becomes actually dangerous if the will of the person acquiring the knowledge and information acts without discrimination. So what is learning from a philosophical perspective? It is just not the capability to acquire knowledge and develop intelligence to process knowledge with reason, but also to act with heart. That is, to develop an intuitive skill to feel and radiate love for others and act accordingly. And while acting or interacting, the ability to feel the beauty of oneness with others. So learning is a continuous process that combines knowledge, intelligence, and love. This results in development of a strong character with underlying quality of wisdom. So this is where the wisdom is introduced. Acting wisely is essential in the modern world, and learning to act wisely is of utmost importance. Because wisdom is missing in action, we are seeing so much of trouble in the world. We could have avoided these lockdowns, conflicts, the wars that were being waged today, totally. Now let's again take a little more step back and see what is troubling us from not achieving this wisdom in action. That is continuously pushing us only to learn from with head and not the heart. So if we check on the other side of the wisdom, we see avidya or ignorance. In the voice of the silence, we come across the three halls. During the course of this conference, I'm sure we have entered and re-entered these halls by many speakers, but let me give my perspective of what these halls could be. So these are the stages of progression of man, or the three lower planes. The first hall talks about the ignorance. It is the physical plane upon which we are born to live. And it is very truly described as hall of ignorance. The second hall is a hall of learning, which is very truly the place of probationary learning. Because it is said and stated that when the astral centrals are opened, we see much more of everything than what we do on the physical side. On the second hall, there is a warning given to us, a direct extract. Beneath each flower in this region, however beautiful it may be, lies the coiled serpent of desire, that lower desire, which the aspirant must overcome in order to develop in its place the higher desire, which we call it inspiration or aspiration. So we see great personalities, extremely vibrant, talented, seemingly evolved in intellect and reason. Even they succumb to these lower forces of desire. We could see the five mythologies of great sage of Vishwamitra. So these lower forces, referred as Arishad Vargas, they are the 6 passions of mind, or terrible limitations of spiritual learning. The Kama, the lust; Krodha, anger; Lobha, the greed; Moha, the temptation; Mada or Ahankara, the pride of Ahankara, the pride of hubris; Matsya, or envy or jealousy. In fact, they are the limitations of any learning and are considered as roadblocks for any kind of a progress. The third hall is the mental plane, the hall of wisdom. As soon as man is free from attachment of these astral things, he can pass beyond the probationary stage of learning and then begin to acquire that knowledge which is real and definite. Beyond that lies the imperishable world of the Buddhic plane, in which for the first time the learner will meet the true nature of unity. And through the tumultuous journeys, when man evolves, he begins to find order out of chaos and learns to distinguish what he can trust and what he must not trust, and put aside those which are of lower value and wade through the illusions. So illusions is another concept which we must be very careful. These set of material planes, physical, astral, and lower mental, are but the buildings and equipment of a school for man, in which he is taught by means of toys. There is no experience that does not modify the soul and give some kind of an element of wisdom, only if we are perceptive about it. So in order that we gainfully gather the impressions and progress on the path, it is important that we are conscious of the fact that we are given lessons every minute. If only we reckon these experiences, we gain lessons for our practice and more, and suddenly life becomes a game. Maybe sometimes a difficult game, but still it is an interactive game. So sorry. According to Jiddu Krishnamurti, it is important to be at leisure in order to learn. Leisure, according to him, is not having any occupation at the time when we are interacting. In the modern world, this is very important because it is observed that the so-called millennials are those people who are born between the age of between 1980 and 1994. So they are called Gen X people. So they have an attention span of 8 to 10 seconds. We in IT make research to make available certain applications for them. So in when we observe their patterns of concentration or attention, we found that attention span is less than 10 seconds. That means they keep jumping from one task to the other task, and they are multitasking. They use multiple gadgets at the same time. So for instance, they have iPads, they have tablets, mobiles, phones, laptops, music systems, and also a certain amount of physical activity. All of these at the same time. That means they're jumping from one to another. This means that they are occupied psychologically, physically, and intellectually all at the same time. So where is the time to receive any impression that the lessons of life that have to give it to us? Because of this, the valid impressions that a man can gain from inside will be limited. Even if one were to be stripped off of all of these gadgets, still the mind wavers. So the problem is not the modern age, nor the problem with the gadgets. The real problem is actually with the mind, which is ever wavering. So leisure literally means being free from all occupations at the point of interaction. So this interaction could be with another person, with even the so-called gadget or oneself. So are we paying full attention to that? So that is another point that we have to take note when we are on the learning path. Let me share an analogy. I'm not taking it too far. When the computer slows down while performing the tasks, right now actually my computer stuck. It slowed down. In order that we accelerate, we have to kill certain programs. That means when we boot a program, there are several programs, when we boot a system, there are several programs that run in the background. Even for the matter of mobile phone also, there are several applications and programs that keep running in the background. If you have to perform a task, such a task that I'm doing right now, if various other programs are so much that they have to reduce the efficiency of the task that I'm performing, what we can do? We have to go and inquire and look at those. We have to go and inquire and look at those. I'm repeating. Those programs which are unnecessarily running in the background, we have to kill them. We use the word kill in IT parlance. So you understood what I'm coming from. When a man is completely drowned with worries, he is completely down with so much of so many background noises that is going behind him, the concerns, the plans, the designs, which are constantly bothering him. How can he concentrate on the job that he is doing? Even if it is a material job, it is impossible for him to concentrate. Leave alone meditation or lifting oneself to the higher place. It is impossible. So Jiddu Krishnamurti mentions that when the mind is totally unoccupied, there is this new seed of learning. When a man is completely conscious of this factor and the astral body reaches the stage when he is able to bridge the astral consciousness and the physical awareness, it is at that point that he will be able to continuously learn 24 hours a day. There is no distinction between day and night at that time. He will learn 365 days in a year, and perhaps even after life, after death. Now, can this capability or the nature be quickened? Can you have a shortcuts for this? Or can we put ourselves in an acceleration mode? Well, there could be ways, but there is no transformation without a pain and endurance. So this is, however, possible if man takes upon himself an uphill task of treading a rightful path. Then to his amazement, he realizes that the path is become very narrow. When he takes up that path of rightfulness, suddenly he'll realize that the path has become very narrow, tricky, very challenging, full of temptations and distractions. He might then seek the shortcuts. It is at that point unable to bear those too much of distractions, but he has a sight to progress. He might take shortcuts. Instead of endurance, he begins to take a path which is dangerous. So far, it has been a difficult path. Now, when he begins to take shortcuts, it becomes a dangerous path. According to Madame Blavatsky, there are 3 dangers in this path. First danger is the psychic development. She evidently regards that the dangers of ordinary psychic development outweighs far more the advantages. But as a certain amount of development is sure to come. So when there is an effort, there will be a result. But it is all depends upon what kind of effort, what intent are we making an effort, and what result are we seeking. It all depends on that. However, in the course of the evolution of the disciple, Blavatsky warns that an extreme care must be taken, or proper guidance by the teachers must be given, who have already walked that path and who have already advanced. So the second danger is the pride. The pride infuses ignorance. Because of certain practices, some faculties could open, as I mentioned. However, psychic development with half-baked knowledge combined with partial clairvoyance is considered terrible and terrifying for the disciple himself, because what he may perceive as true on the physical side or on the other side may not be actually true. What he sees, even partially, may be far from what actually it is. However, because he is able to see certain things, he may feel exalted from the above all of his fellow men. This only results in slowing down the progress of the path that he has chosen further and further. It should be remembered that there are always a plentiful of sportive and mischievous entities, both on physical side and the other side, who are ready and even anxious to foster various delusions and illusions, even on the physical side. If there are people who are susceptible to praise and greatness, so such men can be easily persuaded that they are great, but not only it's only that the public are not able to understand his greatness. So once they fall a prey for such delusions, they move further and further and away from the real spiritual progress. Now the third danger is of the impurity. The man who is pure in thought and life, pure in intention, and free from taint or selfishness, is guarded from the influence of undesirable entities from other planes. There is in him, there is nothing that can impress from the other side. On the other hand, all good influences naturally surround him and hasten to use him as a channel through which they can act, and then also create a barrier against all which is low and evil. On the other hand, those who are of impure motive in life inevitably attract themselves towards the worst, both in the visible side and also in the invisible side, that all of that surrounds us closely. So those in the pursuit of enlightenment may be distracted in several ways. Some of those distractions I would like to dwell here, which will help us to understand what it takes to be steadfast on the path. So these distractions can be assumptions that attaining, for instance, siddhis, that will lead to kaivalya or enlightenment. Again, in the modern world, it is so much a distraction that even instant nirvanas are sold in the market instantly. I will not be surprised if we can find something in Amazon very soon. Again, there is a strict warning. This is the deviation that we have to be careful. There's a strict warning that from philosophical and theosophical teachings, seeking siddhis is not learning or walking the path of progress. Siddhis should not be sought after. They come naturally in the path of evolution or progression, but never they should be sought. However, let us examine a few methods in which, according to Patanjali, in the 3rd chapter of Yoga Sutras, he has given how siddhis could come. They could come by birth, by drugs, by mantras, by tapas, and by samadhi. Let us examine by birth. We might have come across some people with extraordinary faculties, talent. It could be a simple and exceptional quality of singing at an early age, exceptionally, perform mathematics calculations instantly and exceptional speed, or even read a mind, influence a thought, create a thought, and infuse a thought. So all of these are we must have seen this. India's got talent, America's got talent, Great Britain has got talent. There are various talent shows. There could be tricks or commercial expositions, or they could be real, but there is definitely talent. And it is quite possible, and it is actually fact that those who are possessing this talent definitely in this life have not adopted the yogic practice. So many of them don't even know what is yoga or yogic practice, but still they possess such faculties. And it is also possible that some of them who are morally and intellectually not developed also will have those faculties. In fact, I've come across some people who have these exceptional talents of looking at the other side, or reading a mind, or knowing what is happening that we don't see. They are not highly developed, but they do have these faculties opened up. But unfortunately, some of them have adopted the method of commercializing that talent. It is all depends upon how we use it. Some of them don't even use it; they are not even aware. But once people begin to use it and commercially and make money, I've seen that talent disappeared within 5 to 6 years, with less than a decade, completely gone. They are neither in progress of the path, nor they could come back to the normal life. So it is very important that how we progress and how people use any of the capabilities or intellectual capability also. It's not necessary that we have superpowers that we want to use. Even intellectual capabilities, how we use it for the benefit of the society. How do we don't use it for our own selfish purposes? That is important. Now, drugs is another method in which this can be developed. It is written, and it is many instances, that psychic powers of low grade are developed even by using certain herbs and drugs. Many fakirs in India use certain herbs for development of a very low grade clairvoyance. They can bring a remarkable chemical changes and create certain opening of certain insights, but it is highly recommended that nowhere anybody should be going towards that, because it has to be done by under extreme care. And even if it is done, the effect that it would bring will be limited, and the demerits or the kind of terrible side effects that it would give will be lasting for lives. Not the physical body that is destroyed, but even all other bodies are completely drilled with holes. and then repair it takes lives. Next is mantras, the third method mentioned by the use of mantras. The term mantra is applied with certain words, verbages, sounds, the way we pronounce mantra in meditation, and also with certain amount of intent, the force of the mind combination gives great effect. Certainly, definitely better than other methods that are discussed. So the use of certain mantras have a potent energy, like the pranama or Gayatri mantra, about the unfoldment of the consciousness, and there is no limit to such unfoldment. Again, whatever mantra that is used, it all depends upon with what intent that is being used, what expectation that is being used, how much of selfishness that is being involved in that, and so on and so forth. So if it is purely in the path of enlightenment, definitely there is a progress. There are certain tantric systems. Originally, ages back, rishis brought it into our system. They are actually pure sattvic and have nothing to do with black magic as it is commonly misunderstood in these days. Tantra is definitely not black magic, but it is a definite process. They have a certain process models that are very secret, because it can be applied by to those only who have evolved. It is only a method of quickly accelerating the path, but not for those common man who has not even treaded any path. So it is again has to be looked at very carefully. Tapas is another method. So the Puranas are full of stories of people who obtained all kinds of siddhis by performing austerities, various kinds of propitiating different deities. All those stories may be true or may not be true, but definitely tapas leads to a development of certain kinds of occult powers, is a fact that is known to all those who are reading yoga. The term tapas is often associated with the idea of extreme austerity and even self-torture. Such kind of method of holding an arm and extended towards the sky and standing on one leg, lying on the bed of spikes, walking on the fire. There are various practices. It might help in development of a will, but there are better ways of doing this tapas. These hatha yoga schemes have a great demerit. They may have their own mechanism, but they have a great demerit in making the physical body useless for that service of humanity. Moreover, the benefits from these practices do not last long. They are very short-lived. Sri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says the real tapas, about the tapas. He says that reverence to gods, the elders, the teachers, the wise, the purity, straightforwardness, continence, and harmlessness are the real tapas of the body. The word tapas literally means heat. Perhaps more nearest word is effort. The real meaning of the teaching with regard to it seems to be that do for the body what you know it is good for it, disregarding mere comfort. Do not laziness, selfishness, and indifference stand in the way of your doing. And what you can make your personality healthy, please do that, and in the efficient work of the society. So that is the real essence of tapas. Next is the final one is samyama or samadhi, the last and the most important, which is preceded by dharana and dhyana and ashtanga yoga, which are commonly translated as concentration and meditation. While samadhi is interpreted as contemplation, siddhis, which are developed as a result of this practice of samyama, they belong to a different category, and they are far more superior to those developed in other ways. They are the actual product of a natural unfoldment of consciousness in its evolution towards the perfection, and therefore they become the permanent possessions of the soul. Although a little effort may be needed in each incarnation to revive in the early stages of yogic learning. So what are these siddhis? I don't want to dwell a lot and go further and hold this topic, but let me at a high level dwell on this. They are the anima, mahima, lagima, garima, prapti, prakamya, ishatva, and vashitva. So they're all the 8 siddhis ability to fly, ability to reach to long places, ability to shrink in size, grow in size, to the microcosm or macrocosm levels, and lift, any objects. All of these siddhis are demonstrated by Lord Hanuman in Ramayana epic. Does he do it with selfishness? Does he know that even he has it? In fact, it was told by him, sir, you have this power, please jump. It is time that you use this siddhi. So, and actually, even if you're not considering these kind of powers, like the Iron Man or Superman or whatever in the modern world, that those kind of siddhis, even if you keep aside, from the philosophical perspective, what are these real siddhis? What are these great powers? From the philosophical perspective, the steadiness or effulgence of the body, control of senses, appetites. More importantly, the real siddhi is the beauty and gracefulness with which one presents himself or herself. Another example, a great example who has a great possession of the siddhi is Lord Rama in the epic of Ramayana. The kind of beauty he radiates when he presents himself, the mesmerism that he has. People are mesmerized by his very presence and the grace with which he carries himself. And of course, Sita. That is the real siddhi to which all of us must definitely work towards. Patanjali, however, does not recommend any of the methods except the last one, which is Samyama or Samadhi. He merely enumerates, also maybe for a purpose of cautioning us not to go that way. So he also provides 4 qualifications. Patanjali provides 4 qualifications on this path of learning that leads to wisdom. They are faith, indomitable energy or will, memory, keen intelligence, essential for samadhi. Faith is a firm conviction regarding the presence of truth we seek within us and the efficacy of yogic technique in enabling us to reach the goal. It is not the ordinary belief which can be shaken by contrary arguments or repeated failures, but the state of inner certainty which is present where a purified mind is irradiated with the light of buddhi or spiritual intuition. So without this kind of faith, it is impossible for anyone to persevere through many lives which are needed by the ordinary aspirant to accomplish this objective of yogic discipline. And next is energy or virya. The word virya in Sanskrit represents the energy and cannot be translated in any one word in English. It comes in itself on connotations of energy, determination, courage, in all aspects of indomitable will, which ultimately overcomes all obstacles and forces in its way to the desired goal. Next is the memory. The word smriti is not used here in ordinary sense, memory or smriti. The not ordinary sense or psychological sense of memory, but a special sense. The yogi, according to Patanjali, has to acquire the capacity to note the lessons of the experience and retain them in the consciousness of future guidance. So I have initially mentioned about memory and the tasks of accumulation of knowledge, facts, and various data that we process. But the real data that I'm referring here is totally different from what I have referred earlier. So it is the memory of the lesson that we have learned in our lives. It may be a simple lesson of avoiding a food that is not good for us, avoiding a lifestyle which doesn't help us, avoiding and falling a prey, succumbing to various lower senses again and again, repeatedly, having fully known that those lifestyles, those methods of living in a sensuous manner does not help us. But still there is a failure. Can we look at those lessons that we have learned over a period of years and lives and retain that memory. And then when a time comes, when a test comes, can we apply that memory and do not act in a way that fails us, that yields us to temptation. So the aspirant for liberation must have the capability to learn from all experiences quickly. If we could but retain such lessons in our memory permanently, our evolution would be extraordinarily rapid. The problem for yogis is to stop adding to these accumulated impressions by learning the technique of nishkama karma. This is the next and final stage, and desirelessness, and to work out all those potentialities which we have been acquiring for a long time, which we call them as vasanas, indwelling native qualities. So ultimately depends upon the destruction of this avidya, and which is the true essence of learning. So to summarize, we are progressively in the stages of transformation from avidya to ignorance, to continuous learning, and that to wisdom, and that wisdom which illuminates and binds all the souls into unity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Patri. I think that took us from Blavatsky's to Patanjali and back and forth, and especially your description of the lower siddhis and all the warning signs, and also the last concluding part was extremely interesting. Some of us have to go back to it again. Now I invite Brother Dinakaran, yes, Brother Dinakaran joined the Theosophical Society in 1983 at the Adyar Lodge. He's a second-generation Theosophist, and he has been the secretary of the Kerala Theosophical Federation for many periods between 1989 to 92, 2010 to 2013, and from 2016 till date. He has served 2 terms as a national lecturer of the Indian section. The Kerala Sahitya Academy published a book authored by him called Brahma Vidya Sangavam Kerala Nava Udvam. I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Means yes, sir. Means Theosophical Society and Renaissance of Kerala. So I am assuming it's Nava Udvam. I think that is what it must be. He also compiled the talks of Radha Bernier, which was entitled "Listen to the Song of Life," and he's also compiler of Surendra Narayan's talks entitled "Leave Your World and Come Into Ours." He's translated The Theosophic Life by Annie Besant. He regularly contributes articles to The Theosophist. He has lectured several times in our Easter conference and in the Indian section convention held at Adyar. His talk today is beautifully titled "The Inner Flowering of the Soul." Over to you, brother.
Thank you, Vimalaji, for your kind words introducing me. I hope I am audible to you.
Yes, sir.
I am very grateful to the Indian section for giving me an opportunity to talk on this Easter conference. I also congratulate all the people who are behind this online program. I'm sure that we are all eager to meet at Adyar as soon as possible. If possible, at the next international convention. Attending a program at Adyar and through online is entirely different. There's a difference, actual difference between all these online programs and attending a program at our pilgrim center Adyar, especially on a book like this, Voice of the Silence, written by H.P. Blavatsky. Voice of the Silence is dedicated to the few. In the preface of the book, Blavatsky says a judicious selection only from those treatises which will best suit the few real mystics in the Theosophical Society, and which are sure to answer their needs. So it is clearly stated, it is dedicated to the few mystics in the Theosophical Society. Brother C. Jinrajadasa, former president of the Theosophical Society, used to say that there are many students of the secret doctrine, but not many of the voice of the silence. Voice of the silence is ethical and practical, and its appeal is to the heart and initiation of the person who gives heed to the voice, whereas the secret doctrine becomes, at least for most people, very much an intellectual study. There's a difference. The verses of the voice of the silence are derived from the book of Golden Precepts, one of the works put into the hands of mystic students in the East. The word mystic comes from the root which means to close the eyes. The Sanskrit word muni means silent or mauna. So these two words, two terms, indicate persons who are inwardly silent and blind to the transitory world of illusion. The quality of such a person, muni or mystic, is described in Gita as follows. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagradi samyami yasyam jagradi bhudani sa nisha pasyato muni. That which is the night of all beings for the disciplined man is the time of waking. When other beings are waking, then is it night for the sage who sees. The three sections of the book, namely the voice of the silence, the two paths and the seven portals, deal with the same theme, treading the spiritual path. The opening stanza of voice of the silence states clearly to the readers, these instructions are for those ignorant of the dangers of the Lavridi. Our brother Patri has explained what are the dangers behind it. Iddhi is a Pali term synonym of the Sanskrit siddhis or psychic faculties, the abnormal powers in man. These siddhis are divided into lower and higher psychic or spiritual. That was also mentioned by our brother Patri. Today we are assembling here on the eve of Easter. Today is Good Saturday. One of the wonderful passages from the Holy Bible, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus Christ said, "Be you therefore perfect, as your Father which is in heaven is perfect." Here the word perfect means complete, purna in Sanskrit. This perfection can be attained by following the steps as enumerated in this small book in size, Voice of the Silence. Listening the inner voice, treading the path, going through the seven portals will enable a sadhaka or chela to realize that higher state. The Mahayana Buddhist tradition mentions about renunciation, Buddha's great renunciation. After achieving nirvana, Buddha desired to show the light to the world. The greater renunciation is renouncing the higher work after seeing it in order to do the lesser work. In order to attain or reach the spiritual heights, one should have the quality of humility. It says, that is Voice of the Silence, be humble if thou wouldst attain to wisdom. Be humbler still when thou hast mastered. Here the simile of ocean is used and said, be like the ocean which receives all streams and rivers. The ocean's mighty calm remains unmoved. In Gita it is stated, he attains peace, into whom all desires flow as rivers flow into the ocean, which is filled with water but remains unmoved. In Voice of the Silence, Blavatsky mentions about Jnaneshwari, the Marathi version of Bhagavad Gita, one of the, as a mystic treatises. There's often, we can see many similarities between the slokas of Gita and Voice of the Silence. When the personality is merged in the mighty ocean of individuality, where is the question of personal salvation? Voice of the Silence says, and now thyself is lost in self, capital S. Thyself unto thyself, capital T, merged in that self from which the first disc radiate. Where is the individuality, Lanu? Where the Lanu himself? It is the spark lost in the fire, the drop within the ocean. The ever-present ray become the all and the eternal radiance. In Voice of the Silence, there is a reference of 4 noble truths according to Buddha, namely sorrow or suffering, the cause of sorrow, the ceasing of sorrow, the way which leads to the escape from sorrow. HPB in her glossary says, according to Northern Buddhism, it is as mentioned, suffering or misery, KU, Ku, assembling of temptations, TU2, their destruction, MU, the path, the Tao. I may be wrongly pronouncing these terms. Then we reach beneath the Bodhi tree, which is perfection of all knowledge, and attain Samadhi, the state of faultless vision. We have to undergo, realize all these 4 truths in order to tread the path. Buddha pronounced these Arya Satyas, great Arya truths, as a condition to the followers. Not only Buddha, Sri Shankara also mentioned the same thing, Logam, Shoga Hatam Cha Samastam. This world is full of sorrow. That's why many people considered Shankara as a Prachanda Buddha, Buddha in disguise. He mentioned in his Bhajagovindam, which is very popular work by Adi Shankara. Many people recite it off and on during their evening and morning meditations. Uncertain is the life of man as raindrops on a lotus leaf. The whole of humankind is prey to grief and ego and disease. Without love and self-knowledge, one cannot realize the truth. Here the great teacher wants, if thou art told that to become Arhan, thou hast to cease to love all beings. Tell them they lie. The householder who looks after his family members cannot be considered as a worldly man because he has raised himself from personal desires. Compassion and eagerness to help are the qualities desired by a disciple. Cutting off all personal ties, calling them as mere sentimentality, may lead to left-hand path or Vama Marga, which is shunned by all teachers. The importance of self-knowledge is emphasized in Voice of the Silence rather than mere observations and ceremonies. Voice of the Silence says, thus teach the Tirthikas, the unbelievers. I would like to explain this word as given by HPB in the glossary. The meaning of the word Tirtha is a crossing place, a bathing place, any shrine, Tirthadagar, or pilgrims. The Tritikas are termed as unbelievers because, or wrong believers, by dipping in a holy river tank or visiting a shrine, they believe that they become pure. The Orthodox people are referred here. This is contradictory to the teachings of Lord Buddha, who taught within oneself, deliverance must be sought. Adi Shankara also in his work Bhajagovindam mentioned about this. Kurude Ganga Sagara Gamanam Vrata Paripalanam Athava Dhanam Jnana Vihina Sarvamadena Muktir Bhajadina Janma Shatena. I think many of you can very clearly follow the Sanskrit word. Till I would like to give the English version, though for the sake of his salvation, man may go a pilgrimage to Ganga Sagara. Ganga Sagara is near Calcutta. Keep his vows and give to the poor. Failing the knowledge of the highest, nothing of this assures him freedom, even in the span of 100 lives. The golden thread which goes through these three precious gems, light on the path, voice of the silence, and at the feet of the master, is one and the same: self-knowledge. Abstaining from action is only an escape from the duties bestowed upon us. That is why it is not recommended. The voice of the silence recommends to reach nirvana, one must reach self-knowledge, Atma-jnana, and self-knowledge is of loving deeds, the child. You have to sow kindly acts to reap their fruition. Inaction in a deed of mercy becomes an action in a deadly sin. To know what is right action, he should have self-knowledge. The first fragment concludes with this stanza stating that the disciple becomes the light, the sound, and thou art thy master and God. Thou art thyself the object of thy search. The voice unbroken that resounds throughout eternities, except from change from sin, exempt the seven sounds in one. This teaching, as per Buddha's famous advice to his disciples, be a lamp unto yourself, Atma-dibo Bhava. The flowering of the soul is the title of this talk, and we should consider the term soul as mentioned in this book. Soul or human soul has an immaculate origin, but becomes corrupted through exposure to the influence of the world of matter. Soul and mind are found in nature as well as in each individual, and the mind is born out of the soul. In the three great truths given in the book, Idyll of the White Lotus, the first truth is the soul of man is immortal, and its future is the future of a thing whose growth and splendor have no limit. Man has got the great capacity, other beings, to understand the movement of his own consciousness and its process. This enables him to mold his own destiny. This is rightly stated in the second great truth. The principle which gives life dwells in us, and without us is undying and eternally beneficent, is not heard or seen or smelt, but is perceived by the man who desires perception. The responsibility of cleaning our vehicles to tread the upward journey is fully vested upon the disciple. The third great truth proclaims this: each man is his own absolute lawgiver, the dispenser of glory or gloom to himself, the decreer of his life, his reward, his punishment. There are two great stages on the path of soul's evolution. The first is called Pravarti Marga, the way of fortgoing. The second, the Nivritti Marga, the path of return. Taking oneself in his own hand is the real treading of the spiritual path. The third fundamental proposition of the poem of the secret doctrine states as thus: the fundamental identity of all souls with the universal oversoul, the latter being itself an aspect of the unknown root and the obligatory pilgrimage of every soul, a spark of the former through the cycles of incarnation or necessity in accordance with cyclic and karmic law during the whole term. The divine spark has to pass through every elemental form of the phenomenal world of that Manvantara and acquired individuality first by natural impulse and then by self-induced and self-devised efforts checked by its karma. It ascends through all the degrees of intelligence from the lowest to the highest manas, from mineral and plant up to the holiest archangel or Dhyani Buddha. The cardinal doctrine of the exoteric philosophy is that it admits no privileges or special gifts in man, save those won by his own ego through personal effort and merit throughout a long series of metempsychosis and reincarnations. Here there is a mention about soul of the earth. How can we identify that our soul is glued to the earthly passions? Voice of the Silence says, if thy soul smiles while bathing in the sunlight of thy life, if thy soul sings within her chrysalis, chrysalis means cocoon, of the flesh and matter, if thy soul weeps inside her castle of illusion, if thy soul struggles to break the silver thread that binds her to the master, know, O disciple, thy soul is of the earth. 4 conditions are mentioned here. Bishop Ledbeater, who has made a long commentary on Voice of the Silence, known as Talks on the Path of Occultism, mentions the sunlight of thy life are those periods in our personal existence when fortune smiles upon us and everything seems bright and fair. The ego basks in that pleasure and mistakes it for the true happiness of the higher self, as not at the higher vairagya. The chrysalis or cocoon referred here are the 3 bodies which we possess: physical, astral, and mental. With their habits constitutes the personality. The soul must be in these bodies, but not of them. Must not accept that life as its own, but must realize that it is independent of its vehicles. Though soul should not sing within his cocoon or enjoy, or equally wrong to weep in sorrow or depression. This cocoon is only a temporary shelter in our onward journey. The silver thread is mentioned here, which means emblem of purity that binds the soul to the higher self. Every traffic of impurity of body, emotions, or thought is a struggle to break that silver thread, a temptation to ignore the still small voice. This term voice of the silence is general in many spiritual texts. For example, in Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, and of secrets I am silent. In 10th chapter of Gita, you can find this word, Maunam Chaivasmi Guhyanam. I am silent. The knowledge of knowers am I. Soul is used here for the human ego or manas, that which is referred in our occult septenary division as the human soul, in contradistinction to the spiritual and animal souls. The word soul is first used in this book, in verse 9, which says, before the soul can see, the harmony within must be attained and fleshly eyes be rendered blind to all illusion. Leadbeater explains what is harmony within. It is between ego and its vehicles and between those vehicles themselves. In an ordinary person, there will be perpetual strain going between the astral body and the mental body, between the desires and the mind. Neither of these bodies is in tune with the ego or prepared to act as his vehicle. Everybody knows this difficulty in our daily life. The personality must be purified, and the channel between it and the ego must be opened and widened. Otherwise, personality sees everything and everybody from its personal point of view. It is just like seeing through a distorted lens, which gives a wrong version, a wrong picture of the object. Again, Voice of the Silence says, before the soul can hear the image, man has to become as deaf to roarings, as to whispers, to cries of bellowing elephants, as to silvery buzzing of the golden firefly. If the disciple has to listen the inner voice, he should be deaf to the roarings of the samsara sagara, ocean of earthly existence, and the cravings, Krishna. In Pali, it is called tanha. Dharana, one stage in our Yoga Sutras will enable us to reach that state. He should be unshaken by all external things equally to big breakers of life that dash against him, as well as by delicate murmur of softer ripples. The third stage is depicted as follows. Before the soul can comprehend and may remember, she must unto the silent speaker be united, just as the form to which the clay is modeled is first united with the potter's mind. The great beauty of the Voice of the Silence is its poetical way of expressing great examples such as potter's mind, similes like mirror, great bird, moth, storming sea, etc. Here the examples of potter's mind is used. We know that when the potter desires to make a jar or a pot, it is first created in his mind, and his fingers molds it cleverly. Leadbeater in his commentary states that there are three stages in the development of consciousness. On the probationary path, the man's highest consciousness works upon the higher mental plane. After the first initiation, until the fourth, it is climbing steadily through the Buddhic plane. At the end of that stage, it enters on the Atmic or spiritual plane. He has then become united with the will, the directing agent, controller of his destiny. Here, Leadbeater quotes, he himself was a bishop, he quotes Jesus Christ's words during his meditation at Gethsemane garden. It is very pictorically described by many famous painters. Garden, Christ at the Garden of Gethsemane. He was in deep meditation there. But Christ prayed to his Father in heaven in secret. What he said? My Father, if it is possible, may this cup in earthly sorrow be taken away from me. Then he added one more word, that not as I will, but as you will. He repeated this prayer 3 times. It is worth reading that passage from the Holy Bible. And all the 3 times he says, thy will be done. Thy will be done, not my will. But once the union takes place, he, according to Leadbeater, says, thy will and mine are one. I and the Father are one. If you know me, then you will also know my Father. Saint John. According to Saint John, this is elaborately described just as the design of the pot that is to be made is first in the potter's mind, and just as the model for a race of man is in the Manu's mind. Here we must note that is why the use of the word soul in these 3 verses. It is the soul that treads this path of progress, not the personality. In the first half of the path, it unites itself more and more completely with the buddhi, forming the spiritual soul, manas taijasi. But all the work is done under the direction of the Atma. The voice of the silence says, in verse 15 of the verse of the silence, you can find when the words turmoil, the budding soul lends ear, when to the roaring voice of the great illusion, thy soul responds. When frightened at the sight of the hot tears of pain, when deafened by the cries of distress, thy soul withdraws like a shy turtle within the carapace of selfhood. Learn not disciple or of her silent, learn not disciple of her silent, thy soul is an unworthy shrine. One of the major ideas put forward by theosophy is evolution. For many centuries, the Western world had no idea of evolution, and the theology taught them, especially in the Western world, the world and all the various creatures. The theological evolution is different entirely. The world and all the various creatures in it had been created quite suddenly. They refused the idea of more complex forms had evolved out of inferior ones and would evolve further into something more perfect. Theosophists declared the soul of man is immortal and his future is the future of a thing whose growth and splendor have no limit. After some time, people put forward the idea that the material forms of living creatures were undergoing evolution, an unfoldment which has been believed by some to be due to an impulse of the indwelling life, and by others merely to the selective agency of natural environment. But long ago, there existed a theory of evolution of the soul, which has been a central doctrine of the Hindu and Buddhist traditions, which extensively spread by the theosophies along with reincarnation, this karma, reincarnation. All these terms are familiarized to the Western world by the theosophies. The soul incarnates many times for the sake of experience, and each one will thereby become at last not merely a genius in some field of human thought or work, but a perfect man for full conscious divinity. As I mentioned earlier, be perfect as your Father in heaven. Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras, Sadhana Pada, 18 Sutra says, the purpose of this life and the existence of this world. The seen, objective side of manifestation consists of the elements and sense organs, is of the nature of cognition, activity, and stability, and has for its purpose providing the Purusha experience and liberation. Prakasha, Kriya, Sthiti, Bodhendriyatmagam, Bhoga, Abhavargartham, Drishyam. Now we are going to discuss a point which sometimes confuses many. Attavada. In Buddhism, it's a Buddhist word which means Atta means Atma and Vada means doctrine. HPB explains as Attavada, the hearsay of the belief in soul, or rather in the separateness of soul or self from the one universal infinite self. The doctrine of Atma is the great source of division between the Hindus and Buddhists. But as a matter of fact, the distinction is merely one of words. Because when Hindus say that the self or Atma in man is one with the universal self. It doesn't mean by the word what people usually mean when they say, think or speak of themselves, but something altogether deeper, which only the advanced yogi can imagine. Leadbeater quotes a passage from Sri Vakya Sudha, which warns the aspirant that when he repeats the great religious formula, Soham, I am that, he must take care what he means by I. It explains that the separate individual should be understood as threefold, and that it is the union with the Brahma only of the highest of these three that is proclaimed by thou art that, Tattvamasi, and such sayings, not the personality. Lord Buddha's teachings denies the permanency of the you that men call I. See the beauty of the presentation of Leadbeater, reconciling these two concepts, seemingly different to many people, Anattavada and the philosophy of soul in Hinduism. A real understanding of religion is only possible by studying the divine wisdom. When we learn theosophy, we learn what the Buddhism talks about Anattavada, what Hindus talk about the salvation or moksha of the soul. In Hindu philosophy, if you go deeply, moksha kamana, the desire to get salvation, is also considered as a sin, because it is also a subtler form of desire. I should be liberated, I should get salvation, I should get moksha. That is also a selfish form of the individual. All desires are binding. If one asks what is the warp and woof of the voice of the silence, that question may be asked. What is the whole content of the voice of the silence? Could you summarize it? I would like to say self-knowledge and compassion. These two things are mentioned deeply in this voice of the silence. It is not the knowledge of the doctrines, not mere philanthropy. These two words are not used in that sense. There's a famous poem in Malayalam known as Karuna. I don't know what is the equivalent word for Karuna in English, but I would like to use the word compassion, adapted from Buddhist stories. This whole poem is the poetical presentation of a Buddhist story, and it was written by a great poet known as Mahakavi Kumar. The story goes like this. There was a Ganiga, or a prostitute, named Vasavadatta in Mathura, northern Mathura, enchanted by the grace of Ubagupta, a Buddhist monk. She invited him to her palace several times, but Ubagupta's reply was, time has not yet come. Vasavadatta committed a murder, and she was punished by the king. Her limbs were mutilated and thrown in a graveyard. At her final end of life, Ubagupta visited her, and she took refuge in the Sharanatrayas and breathed her last. This is the story. Here ends the story actually, but the poet, the great poet Kumar makes a request to the great Buddhist monk Ubagupta. Oh Ubagupta, I don't leave this world after attaining nirvana. Come again to serve this world. The service of great compassionate souls like you are required for the earth. This was a request made by the poet to the Ubagupta. Come again without attaining nirvana. There is an option for all such great souls to remain back and serve the world. This is the spirit of voice of the silence which we should study meditate and put into practice. Hence, HPB wish was, keep the link unbroken. Do not let my last incarnation be a failure. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Dinakaran. And just a reminder, anybody who has questions or comments can post it here or come to this meeting at 5 p.m. Next meeting will be at 4 o'clock. But just for ending, I just wanted to end in a small joke. Brother Dinakaran mentioned that Jinarada Dasa said that people don't study the voice of silence, they only study the secret doctrine. I don't think if he was alive today, Jinarada Dasa would not have complained. From morning, we've had only lectures connected to the voice of silence. So I thank you all for joining today on behalf of the Indian section. Bye.
Thank you. So we'll meet again on at 4 p.m., which will take us to the other part of the show, that is with the 3 new speakers. I am grateful to particularly Brother Dinakaran as well as Brother Raghunath from Rayalaseema. Rayalaseema Federation, they have given 3 new speakers, and also Brother Dinakaran also, he recommended 2 new speakers already. One in the afternoon, another in the Sunday. So let us join at 4 p.m. with the 3 new speakers, all of course very deep student of theosophy. These announcement, I am going to close this session. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, same to you, sir.